The biggest change for League of the Americas going into 2025 is in the name itself. The Americas. It's now more than just North America. Once we get below Texas, normally as Americans we're like, what's down there? Well, now we have a responsibility to learn. There are co-owners in the league. The South consisting of 8 total teams, similar to North, but these being a hybrid of both the CBLOL and one team from the LLA. Some of these names are familiar if you have experience in any esport ever or have watched LoL esports for a while, given that Loud, for example, has made it to the international stage, but some of these other teams I've never seen before. Now, this series and Road to the Americas is not just about informing everybody else about things that I care about, it's also about learning myself, because one of the biggest things that you need to understand as a content creator is that A, you do not know everything, and B, it is never too late to learn. So, let me introduce you to Henrik de Moor. In his words, a Brazilian-born, American-raised caster and host for the CBLOL English. He also translates for the VCT Americas, but he's going to have more information than I ever could on the 8 teams that make up the LTA South. So, come along with me as we learn about our southern counterparts in the League of the Americas. Who are the teams, and what are like the cultural differences between them?
So, I mean, it is interesting because I feel like every team has like a bit of it's almost like a soccer like atmosphere, right? Where there are like big teams that are just like, they are their fans are absolutely obsessed. And the obsession, it's not whether it exists or not on certain teams, it's to what degree is the insanity going. Like, will you like every single could you imagine the LCS studio being sold out, literally like standing room only every single week?
I can imagine it, but it's purely a hypothetical thought.
Right. Yeah. But like that happens when like okay, the protagonist here. We'll start with the protagonist. Pain Gaming.
Yeah.
Always the protagonist. They always love to insert themselves as the protagonist, even when Loud was winning all the titles because they were always in second place. They are, you think of the stereotypical like, oh, the Cowboys, Yankees, Laker fan, right? They are the big team. They are the ones that have, even though they don't have the most titles, they have the biggest history and they've got the most insane fans, right? They're the ones that, anything other than perfection, the sky is falling, get rid of this player, get rid of this player. And so that passion obviously breeds a lot of content. You live in New York, you know how insane
Yep.
these markets can get. Exactly. You grew up in Mad Dog radio time, right? You know how insane this is. Like, yeah, so Pain, I mean, they are kind of, yeah, they're the Yankees, effectively.
Okay.
And they have the most insane fans. They are like, before finals when the team busts, the team van is like pulling up to the arena. They're setting off like flares and smoke and the chants and the flags and like it's absolutely bananas. And yeah, and I think they've kind of developed almost a segue to Loud. They've developed a rivalry between them. Yes, because they met in the finals for I want to say 5 straight times.
Yeah.
And Loud won every single time.
Cool.
Except for, yeah, like when Loud was going to Worlds or MSI every single year, they beat Pain every single time. And actually, the final before that, Pain lost to Red Canids.
Yeah.
And then the final after that mini dynasty, they finally got over the hump. And they didn't actually beat Loud in the finals, but they dumped them down into the lower bracket 3-0, and that was good enough for them. But Loud kind of came out of nowhere, right? They were like, we're splashing the cash, we're partnering with big streamers, we have Vinicius Jr. as one of our like brand ambassadors, like, and so they almost felt like the spotlight was sort of taken away from them because here comes Loud and they're kind of new money, almost, right? That's kind of their identity, but they are much more Gen Z, more streamer focused, right? And like, they have a lot of big personalities that they sign to do personality driven content, I'd say.
Is there the sense of like, because it is newer money, it is more like hip and trend. I hate to use the word hip and trendy. God, that's terrible. But is there a worry of like, if say they don't perform, say like eventually the content creators go elsewhere, or big enough to like start their own thing, does the brand loyalty go away, or is it enough so early that they've cultivated enough of a cult following that there is no worry once that happens?
I think they will because they've had the results kind of to match, and I don't think you can also underestimate what winning Worlds in Valorant did for them as well, right? Because like for the Brazilian league, and this is like the secret sauce that they have that I don't know why or how they have it, right? Because in the US we're a lot more concerned about like, oh, how are our teams going to do internationally? Yes, we follow the LCS because it's entertaining, but the international results matter a lot more to us in the US. In Brazil, not quite as much, right? The entertainment value of the league in and of itself is enough to keep people engaged.
Yep.
But that being said, in games like CS, right, where players like Fallen are obviously bigger than larger than life, and they Brazil has a history in shooters. So then when Valorant comes along and it's like, okay, well, all the CS talent obviously migrated over to Valorant. And so that kind of carried over. And so that passion for CS carried over. And it was like, oh no, we actually won the whole dang thing. Right. My Twitter feed was just like Brazil, literally in tears. There were people weeping at like that. It was such a big deal.
I mean, so was
Right.
mine, but that's because I'm an Optic fan. So,
Yeah. Yeah, no, okay, no, so you understand. Yes, I forgot you had an
yep,
optic connection. No, so you understand how crazy this is,
yeah,
right? And how insane the Brazilians are about this. But I think also just because Loud has quickly come in and established itself, because like that's kind of like, I mean, we've seen this in esports, we've been around this industry long enough to see every time a new org comes in and just throws money at the problem, that's all well and good. But like you said, when the results don't come,
hmm
then you find yourself millions of dollars in debt. You look around, you go, oh no, wait, whoa, wait, this is what I signed up for. But Loud, you want to call it, luck, skill, I don't know what exactly you attribute it to, but they got the results initially, right? So that this generation of fans that grew up kind of poked, they came in from Free Fire, actually. That was their original game.
yeah,
Free Fire, then Valorant, League of Legends. So they've gotten enough results, right? A world championship in Valorant, and then 4 straight League of Legends titles in CBLOL. So that generation of fans, I don't think is going anywhere.
okay. Who's after them? Because it seems like those are the two at the top. Then, is there
Mhm.
anybody else that's on that tier, or is it like stepping down to the next level?
So funnily enough, I would say two of the teams that would have been in that conversation are now no longer in LTA South.
Ooh,
They, yeah, the winningest org in CBLOL history, INTZ, who have been around forever and ever, they have 5 titles. They have the most CBLOL titles, and they could not hack it in franchising. They were not chosen for just essentially like their financials were a mess. Behind the scenes, the org was a mess. There were rumblings about players, in tier 2 being told, like, oh, I would get a CBLOL shot if I played for INTZ, and other people being like, maybe don't. Like, wait, like keep plying your
yeah.
trade in tier 2, get better and better, keep dumpstering that league for a split more or two, and then hope for something else to come up, right? So there's a lot of mismanagement there, which is unfortunate because it is kind of a historic brand, but they've got the titles and really not a ton else.
Yeah. So they fold, they're gone. Have their fans kind of gravitated towards anywhere else? Like, is there like, say we're dealing with this with like TikTok getting banned in the US now. Everybody's trying to
Yeah,
find the replacement of like, where do we go after this? Have they found a home elsewhere, or is it still limbo for now?
that's actually a really good question. I think whatever players, right, maybe we're on INTZ, right, wherever they end up, right, which unfortunately hasn't been a ton. And we'll get to an interesting story kind of this with Fluxu, which is an interesting, sort of unfortunate thing, right? But like INTZ, they were kind of trying to run this like the balling on a budget model after their championship runs. They were trying to do a lot with a little. It worked out okay, but it didn't really deliver the results that the what they call themselves the sleeping giants that they would have wanted. So that's a great question. I don't know. I think they will still follow the league because I just like the CBLOL is addictive.
Yeah.
Like I got into it like seriously when I started doing the CBLOL English cast in 2020. I had followed it like loosely because I'm my hello friend. What's friend's name? Hold on, sorry.
This is Coco. She's a
Coco.
Chihuahua Dachshund mix, a pure Chiweenie.
Oh, well, he's perfect, and I love him. Hello, Coco. But yeah, it has this way of bringing you in, man, because the personalities are so big, and that's one thing the league has done, and teams have done very very well is market their personalities. And so I think they'll stay in the league. I don't know where they will go. Honestly, probably not Pain because that is their largest rival.
Yeah,
So probably not there. Yeah.
that makes sense. So then you mentioned Fluxo.
Mhm.
What's to know about them? Because that's a foreign
So
language to me.
yes. So to cap off the previous thing though, the kind of the tier 2 of great orgs, Kaboom, they
Yeah.
are also no longer in franchising, but they are down in tier 2. So
Okay.
they're still there and hoping to kind of punch back up. They are this fascinating case of they've won 4 titles. One of them happened to be the COVID Cup, as we call it, the 2020 split one. But they have actually like an alarmingly small fan base based on
Hmm.
relative to the amount of titles they've had. So they're this interesting little unicorn. But so, people are bummed that Historic Org is gone, but also all 4 of their fans
Yeah.
can't be too fussed about it. Fluxu, they were kind of like what Loud tried to do. I think they also might have come in from Free Fire. That I need to fact check that, but I think they came in from Free Fire, and they kind of tried to do. It feels like a Loud Junior, where they came in
Mm,
and they were very kind of personality driven and like focus a lot on streamers and a lot on like actually to be fair games that Brazilian teams have usually done better in, i.e., shooters and mobile games, right? But the results in the bigger sports, i.e., the big S, right, being League of Legends, those did not follow. They splashed a ton of cash and actually did something that I thought was really cool. They didn't go out and get kind of in their, it wasn't their debut split, but I think it was their second full year in the CBLOL. They went out and constructed what everybody called Super Fluxu, right? It was the CBLOL's newest super team, but it was like the best kind of up and coming talents, right? Guys that were like, for, kind of like off their rookie contracts. You were like, okay, maybe they didn't win anything, but these guys are gonna, if things go right for them, these guys are gonna smoke the league in a couple of years, right? They're gonna be a ton of fun to watch. And they balled out to get the, in traditional sports, right? Yep. You get the rookie contract, and then my Detroit Pistons signed Kate Cunningham to a disrespectful amount of money because it's like, well, if you don't, you're gonna lose him, right? That's just how it works. So they paid everybody that second contract, basically, except for their jungler, who actually ended up being just fine, but he wasn't very good for them. They flopped in pretty spectacular fashion, unfortunately. And but it's the super team thing, right? It never works in League of Legends, and in Brazil, right? Every time you try to talk yourself into there, and there are a lot of good players that are still kind of bumping around in the league. They're still very, very good, but that project didn't really take off. They tried to get BRTT, right? One of the most favorite Brazilian players of all time. He actually. Right? Exactly. Yes, the Draven main. He's got his Twitch in Brazil actually has a Portuguese voice line that is a reference to BRTT. Wow. So it's not quite a world skin, but to get a champion's a voice line like that's not nothing. No. But when he retired at the end of 2021, he came back as like he did the streamer celebrity boxer thing, which is a thing in Brazil too apparently. But he was signed to Fluxu as a content creator / boxer guy. And then the bubble popped for Fluxu. Again, they did the we're gonna play with a bunch of rookies and try to pass it off as but this is kind of what we were doing before with remember all the young players, but it's those two things aren't the same, right? We don't know. But look, they ran a good enough show to where Riot picked them, apparently, right? I do think that they have sort of righted the ship a little bit. They found a little bit of an equilibrium. They've got players that are really worth looking out for. But the big thing with them, they are now in, and I wish I had more information to give you. If you talk to me this time next week, I might have more. It's a developing story. They might sell their slot. There's another org, W7M, which I believe are a Brazilian org, but they are in Rainbow Six.
Yeah, I was gonna say that rings a bell from. So I want to say I saw a Jinxie clip of him watching Rainbow Six or something like that.
Yeah, so W7M, they've always had interest in League of Legends, like MIBR, right? Another huge Brazilian org. It's how can we, break into League of Legends because it's the biggest esport, etc. W7M's been talked to buy their slot, but it's been a bit of a mess for the players that were originally signed on to Fluxu because a lot of those players, if not most of them, including some very beloved figures, haven't had their contracts kind of changed over, right? It's not like when Energy bought CLG, right? And they said, hey, it's different branding, but it's the same, same structure, same whatever, right? Yeah. It has not been like that, unfortunately. And so you've got a lot of players at the last second looking up oh, shoot, I've got to go down into tier 2, right?
Wow.
Yeah, so that's a bit of a mess, unfortunately. And as we tape this on December 16th in the year of our Lord 2024, that's all I got for you.
This video, for context, will probably be posted next Wednesday. So if there is an update, I will put it on the screen now and post the news. Assuming there's an English article on it. I'm sure there will be at some point, but wow.
If not, Google Translate will do the rest for you. But yeah. But so they're in a very interesting spot. And it's unfortunate because it just seemed like kind of when Fluxu kind of, pardon my French, got its shit together, for lack of a better term, right? From the ridiculous overspending to now having kind of found an equilibrium and actually gotten I was kind of very skeptical of them. It's easy to kind of thumb your nose at just the people who think that they can come into esports and just throw money at a problem and voila, everything's gonna be right. But they seem to have had enough self-awareness in the last couple of years that where they've put together a much more fun roster, much more sustainably. It seems like the players they're kind of developing are not quitting on young talent. And then this happens. So I don't know.
Limbo. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I'll keep an eye on it. Two teams on this list though that I do recognize purely from Valorant, but I have no clue beyond that, are Furia and Leviton. Those two I recognize, but did they start in League? Is that what's their background?
So Furia, they are in, I mean, CS, right? That's kind of their
Okay.
bread and butter. That's kind of where they're most known for, right? And so then they obviously had a very nice gateway into Valorant. As far as I can tell, I've been working closer with the VCT last couple, basically last year. But I work as a translator, so I'm like I get to see all the behind the scenes stuff. So actually very fun. But there's results. I mean, when you're competing in Loud's shadow, it's always rough because like their dynasty kind of just fell apart. Honestly, like they actually didn't even make the last two internationals, so Furia had a chance to kind of step in the spotlight. It's not been great for them. In League, it's been all right, and that crossover really, they were helped by the fact that they have a ton of loyal fans from CS, right? It's, oh, that name is on the jersey, therefore that is my team, right? And I'll show up to the studio in Sao Paulo, and we'll have the big flags, and we'll do the chants, and we'll get raucous. It's great. So the fan base is definitely there, and they actually have a completely English-speaking Twitter account as well. So they're actually doing a good job. Yeah, Furia_USA. And they're doing a good job of kind of like already they've gotten out ahead of it because they know they have such a big fan base from CS and stuff. They've gotten out ahead of it. They tried a super team thing in 2021. They entered the league in I think 2020, and that didn't work as no super teams do. And so now, they've got a big passionate fan base. I think it would be good for the scene if Furia did do well in either Valorant or League of Legends because they have such a passionate fan base. And again, like that generational fandom, right? There are people who, shoot, like Furia's been around forever. They might have had kids, and those kids are now old enough to be like, 8 years old and getting their hands on their first PCs and being like, oh shoot, here's League of Legends, here's it's like, oh well, let me tell you about Fallen, and then
it takes off.
Yeah.
Dang. Is Leviton the same or?
So Leviathan, they are they're a LATAM partner team.
Okay.
Yeah, so they are, as far as I can tell, they are they're not a guest team. That would be Estral/Isurus.
Yeah, they were they're one of the two teams. Like for the North, we got why am I the
Was it was
Lion.
Leon.
Yeah, Leon.
Right.
Yeah, so we got
Yeah.
Leon. You guys got Leviton. It's
Exactly.
still a name though that's for what, like, even though like obviously I'm blind to it, it's still one that does stand out on paper. It's like, okay, I at least recognize it.
Yeah, and they kind of like when I think of like the big like LATAM teams, I think of Leviathan and Crew just because I paid more attention to that kind of on the Valorant side, and Crew had the partnership with Messi as well, so that's always going to bring in eyeballs. But Leviathan, right? They are relatively new to the league scene, and so once they kind of got their foot in the door, they kind of came in right as the LLA was falling apart, essentially. But in an interview that was given to a Brazilian outlet, the CEO of Leviathan, he said, "Look, I think we're happy to be in League of Legends. We think that unfortunately the merger, like just LLA, wasn't working. It wasn't economically sustainable, right? Which is the reality. It kind of hit every league to some degree or another, and." They are putting out a decent roster in CBLOL. I think a lot of people think that it will end up in kind of 7th or 8th, but again, they're a partner team, so it doesn't actually matter. Whereas Estral/Isurus, I think they are fascinating, and we're really going to see the potential pitfalls of this model where you've got a team that, kind of every split, whether it wants to or not, is fighting for its life and to not get relegated, even though Estral/Isurus on paper, they have a team that on its day, I think could be the best team of all 8 of these because they are veterans. I really do, and I'm not alone in thinking that. I think if they finish anything lower than top 4, so top half, that's a disaster for them because they essentially got like it's the LATAM Super Friends.
Yeah.
Right. So it's Jose Deodo, it's Ackerman, it's Snaker, and then they got also Bertol, who was in LPL and LCK, was playing for Downwater recently, like 2023, I think, and then Miru, who was playing, I think he played in LATAM, then he played in the LFL, which is a respectable strength league.
Yep.
And now he's here. Like, this is a really good team.
Wow. And unlike Valorant, no matter what, you could win the league. You could go to Worlds and still have to be fighting. Now they'd have to work out the timing of it, but like there is that case where like they say they win the league, they go to Worlds, they're fighting for relegation. Like before they even attend the Worlds event, they have to play in the promotion relegation tournament and keep their spot. That's wild.
Yeah, no notes. It is wild. I'm fascinated to see how this is all going, and I'm glad I'm not an Isurus Estral fan because that sounds awful.
Is there like in the North, we have this conversation right now around like 100 Thieves being a partnered guest slot as they potentially sell it, Riot trying to make a decision, and there's this worry. It's the opposite for us. Nobody is worried that Disguised is going to stand a chance at winning the league this year. But there are conversations like, oh, 100 Thieves will leave. this guys will just slot into that spot. So no matter what happens, they'll be fine. Is there anything like that in the South right now, or like the 7 teams that are locked, other than you just said the sale between Fluxo? Is there anything else that's like volatile that like they have a fallback plan, or like are they just subject to the full ringer?
It seems like they're kind of subject to it. I mean, again, because Leviathan and Source Astral, they come from LLA. I just don't have kind of as much, as much on those teams. But I will say that it won't be easy for them to stay up because there are rosters being formed in tier 2 right now of kind of former, like bottom end CBLOL players. But again, you kind of get the super friends together. And those are rosters that, for me, have the potential to, if they were to be dropped into this 8-team, LTA South, would finish not last.
Yeah.
And so it's unfortunate because I think you were going to have teams that, finish in last and it won't matter. I mean, they're worse. And again, like you get into this broader discussion of, franchising versus direct pro rel and like depending on, developing youth, talent and stuff like that, which is a conversation for this episode. But like, yeah, I think it's going to be, there are going to be teams in tier 2 from Brazil, especially, but also they're keeping LRN and LRS, right? So like LATAM tier 2 is a 2-pronged thing, right? And that's another kind of interesting thing is, how do you kind of make sure that you develop this LATAM identity when like it's an impossible problem to solve because you've got Spanish speaking countries literally spanning tens of thousands of miles on the globe, right? And so to build a cohesive identity is very, very difficult. But there are teams that are going to be absolutely ready to take their spot should they drop down through the promotion or relegation tournament.
Dang. One more team we have to go through. Red Canids, Colunga. Am I saying that right?
Yes. Yeah. Red Canids, Colunga. Yeah. It's one of these weird ones where they are the first 2 words are English, right? Like loud, let's say, but they're said in Portuguese accents, and so it's like a misnomer.
That's
so
what I always get weary of the accents. It's like I grew up
next
to
it's an English word. It's loud, but it's in Portuguese. It's loud because there is no word that ends in a d sound, so it's loud.
Interesting.
Yeah, like they'll do, even though loud is a 1-syllable word, right? Their chants at arenas is loud ba. They turned into a 2-syllable thing because there is no like in the Portuguese like mouth sound lexicon.
Yeah,
loud doesn't exist.
The hard D, everything at the front.
The end. Yeah, which is so natural for us, but it just doesn't exist down there. So red is hedge. Yeah.
Should we be excited about them?
Yeah, honestly, kind of. They're a bit of an enigma team, man. I'm a bit of like a closeted fan of Red because way back in the day they used to be partnered with Corinthians, who are a Brazilian soccer team that I support and my family has supported for a couple of generations. Like I'm my mom's Brazilian, my dad's American. My mom's side still lives down in São Paulo, so that's the team I support. That is like it's religion down there. So I was like, oh, once they joined up, great. I'm a Red fan. But also they've got players that are extremely likable. This is like the power of friendship, the vibes team. Yeah. They're mid jungle duo. They have been best friends for like a long time. They kind of came up through kind of tier 3, tier 2 together. And I think, like as far as personalities that people find very kind of magnetic and drawn to, a neutral's favorite team, honestly, I think is going to be Red Canids because again, just they're very likable guys. They've got in their top laner, FNB is a guy who is probably the best CBLOL player never to win a world title. To win a CBLOL title, excuse me. He's been in the league a long time. He's one of the few black players in the scene as well. So he's talked about that and how he feels immense kind of like, I don't know, burden's the right word, but he feels kind of a sense of responsibility to even though the black population, like in the US, right? It is a much bigger minority than you would have, would have you believe based on like the representation in esports, right? So he talks about that, and then you've got Brunsey, right? The kid who did the Bot Gap thing, right? He's on that team as well. So it's like what they call themselves, kind of like the primos, right? The cousins, right? They're all just like the boys. They kind of embody like their comms are extremely chaotic. They release kind of the behind the scenes comm. It's a lot of screaming. It's wonderful.
That's amazing. And now that you say that, it's interesting to note. I don't think we have a single African American player in the LTA North at all.
Yeah, right. I mean, like I think the last, kind of. Well, I mean, like Will was like coming up, right? But then he's kind of in, not in the LTA North, and it was Aframo, right? He was like, the rush hour bot lane. That's literally their whole identity. What's their racial identity, right?
Yeah. Good times.
Different times, Fred.
Yep. So you kind of touched on like some of the players. Is there anybody like outside of the players that we know, like you mentioned Jose Dioto, we're familiar with him. Is there somebody that like we don't know that we should really be keeping an eye on this year, especially given that we will eventually have to face you guys? And the split one and split three. I mean, split three is more of a problem than split one, but
Yeah.
we'll see.
I mean, I think if you're looking for kind of like, so did you follow the America's Challengers tournament at all in 2024?
I did not. I typically do not
Okay.
follow tier two unless Under Thieves was
Fair,
involved.
fair enough. They Dragonsteel, right, was like they were the one seed from, because it was two teams from each, each of the three regions, so six teams total, and Dragonsteel was the one seed, and they went down there and essentially admitted that they in the pregame kind of recorded it, because they were like, honestly, we don't even think we're going to drop a game here, blah blah blah. They finished in fifth.
Yep.
And they got humbled, right? And a lot of the players were saying like, wow, we didn't expect this, right? And it was actually Vivo Cade Stars Academy team that ended up winning, but Pain Gaming Academy, I believe, also qualified for top four. And if you're looking for kind of their next steps, right? If you were to get, guys from that America's Tier 2 that got promoted to the LTA South, and then kind of, on the LTA North side, right? It's a possibility that they could meet the bot lane of Fluxu or W7M, whatever it ends up being. This is just, they are the bot lane as of now. God knows what will happen a few days from now. Marvin and Gigs. They are kind of two of the younger, more up and coming, promising players, along with maybe the most mechanically gifted player that came out of tier 2. And I would say a top half mechanically AD carry right now is Morteus for Cade Stars. So those are your younger players to watch, because Brazil, like honestly, it's like most minor regions, right? The mechanics aren't usually the problem. It's the macro and the game sense and all that fun stuff, right? That always holds us back. You see the same thing in North America, right? You get in a solo queue, you get really hyped up because, they'll go do their boot camps and they'll hit Challenger on, 6 accounts and, oh, God, this is going to be the year. And then, right, it all just falls apart.
Yep.
So it's not all that. But, yeah, as far as 80 carries, I think Brazil has an embarrassment of riches on that front. I think, yeah, well, I mean, shoot, we've got Seos as well,
Yep.
right? Who's going to be, not like confirmed, but like on Shopify Rebellion. And yeah, I think that's going to be a really interesting thing to follow, because this will be the first export that Brazil has had, right? LATAM actually beat us to having that, right? When we had Jose Dioto in 21 on FlyQuest. But this is the first export that Brazil has had, even though, like, we joke that we've had players good enough to play on LEC teams in the past, to the point where there's an off-season tournament that Baiano, who's a big content creator, he runs every year, and it's like you take Robo and Tinones and kind of the old heads, and they form a team and they call themselves Team LEC. So we know that kind of got a couple players that maybe on talent alone could make it there, but I think someone else that I think is a gem. He's a big content machine. Is Titan. He is, he's been at Worlds a couple times. If you don't know Titan, you will get to know Titan. He was kind of and he's been kind of like, his career arc is kind of crazy, because in his first two splits, he won CBLOL in 2018 back to back, and then he actually won two more splits on Red Canids, right, back to back there. So he's got 4 titles, and now he got his 5th with Pain Gaming. Pain Gaming, right? That was the one roster move that they made. I told you that Pain lost 5 finals in a row, 4 of them to the same opponent. They essentially, that what the fans were clamoring out for was like, look, this is a very high floor team, but the ceiling isn't there, right? And what is your ceiling in League of Legends in the late game? Sometimes it's just an 80 carry who knows when to go forward, right? And because you are the glass cannon, right? This is kind of like, he can be the difference maker. The guy you say, give me the damn ball, I'm gonna go get us an effing bucket, right? Titan is that guy, and he plays with an energy that is so infectious, and he had that killer instinct that Pain Gaming were missing for so long, and he got them their first title since 2021.
Wow. Okay.
So he's a treat. I mean, there are storylines, out the wazoo for a bunch of these guys, like I said. So I mean, yeah, I think as well, maybe something interesting to watch. I'll try to keep this one brief. Vivo Cade Stars, their coach CL, he's Australian by origin, but he came to Brazil with a lot of coaches have had kind of this perspective of like, I see all the mechanical talent in Brazil, I'm gonna go down there and, for lack of a better term, fix it. But what he didn't do was like treat himself like it is a bit of a bad analogy because he's not white, but it's a bit like a white savior complex, right? You come in from like a more quote unquote developed, region or whatever, right? He was an assistant coach on Rogue when they won their titles a couple years ago. And so he came in, but he bought fully into the culture and how like kind of he said it took him like a bit of an adjustment period. He's like, look, we don't they don't take certain things as seriously here, right? But like he kind of bought into a little bit of the stuff that like, oh no, we don't take ourselves as seriously, and sometimes and that's okay.
Yeah.
And he kind of let the players be themselves, and it took a little bit, but he came in and was like, no, I'm going to stay here, and we're the 5-year plan and all this, and he brought in players from ERLs, right, the second tier in Europe, brought them down, and said, no, we're all going to speak English. Hired an English coach to be like, we not all of us can speak Portuguese. So guess what? We're all going to learn English, right? And this will benefit you in the future because English being just a lingua franca, right? If you can get out of esports, right, with more than just 2 years of like, shoot, I wasted, 2 prime years of my life and I didn't even learn, English, let's say, right? That is an important thing. He's got his approach to talent development and like the way I've never seen a foreigner come into Brazil and kind of buy into the culture as much as he has, and he has instantly been like just so like lauded and respected for it. Because like anything that you hold precious, right, the last thing you want is someone else telling you how to feel about you, coming into your space and telling you how to feel about this thing that you love.
Yep.
Right. And he didn't do that, and a lot of foreigners have come in and tried to do that. A lot of Korean coaches have come in and on two cultures that are on opposite ends of the spectrum as far as how seriously you take certain things, i.e. League of Legends, right?
Yep.
And the things that you do and don't hold sacred, right? That clash of cultures, it almost never works out. But I think Peter Dunn and CL are like the two guys that have ever been able to do that.
Interesting. I mean, kind of shifting this now from we've touched on the teams, we've touched on the players. The fans are an interesting one. And I mean this in the sense of there were a lot of people that were obviously unhappy with us, the North, and seeing us as like the reason why all this has happened. Again, I will reiterate, we didn't ask for this. It's a Riot initiative that put us all now at the same table. We're all in the same system, and we all kind of like, whether we like it or not, we all have to work together now to make this a product that works. What's the sentiment like a few months after the announcement now that we're like formally in this, of the South and their view of the North and how they see us going into 2025?
I think things have definitely calmed down. I'll say that from what they were a few months ago, and I think just as kind of the reality of the situation has become more apparent, like you said, that this no one asked for this, and this isn't just an LCS couldn't be financially sustainable problem. It's no, actually the LPL has had a massive drop in viewership year over year, right? The best teams in Brazil actually, right, Loud, they are just hemorrhaging money. So to go back to kind of the crux of your question, I think there is a bit of bad blood, and I think there never won't be, because there will always be that feeling of the CBLOL got sacrificed so the LCS could live, right? That was the overarching narrative. I think that anyone in Brazil even will now sees that, look, that's just not the case, and if you want to keep living in that reality, okay, you can, but that's just not the truth. So do with that what you will. Right, you can have fun and do that, but I do think there is going to be a sense of kind of building a rivalry, right? And I think that, I guess you want to prove that you are better than us, then like you guys have better national success than us, right? Okay, great, come in and come on and show it. And I think the good parts of it are going to be good for building a rivalry, and there already is some of that with Valorant, right? But I think also that what the Valorant scene has shown is that, I mean, I've seen it just again from being like on the translator side of things. There are a lot of Brazilian fans of American players in Valorant.
Yeah.
Jajmo, for instance, he is like a fan favorite. I don't actually know what he did to become so popular in Brazil, but like that can exist, right? You can become like this player who everyone loves, and I think that even having Seos now in the LCS or in LTA North, right? That's going to be, I think that could go an interesting direction of mending those relations, right? I do think that I also think that what did make it better is that like LTA didn't go full Valorant in that, like, they didn't take away the match day experience from Brazilian fans.
Yeah,
I think that was the worry for everybody. And Carlos Antunes, right, who's he's the head of the esports operation in Americas, he basically said as much. Like, look, if it wasn't for kind of how passionate you guys are as Brazilian fans, right, we would have gone full Valorant. That was on the table to just completely just the studio in São Paulo. I don't know what we're doing with it, but it's not for League of Legends, right? Maybe we host one, MSI or First Stand or something in the future, right? But going, week by week, that's just not going to be the case anymore. And so I think the fact that that didn't end up happening, and I think that when everyone kind of took a step back and realized, look, we still get our league. It's not called the CBLOL anymore, right? We have to share a name, and we lost 2 teams, okay, but like the day to day isn't going to change all that much, really. And I think that really kind of helped things out. Now, get the LATAM perspective on this, I think that would be fascinating because they did lose that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to be the one to sit out here and project, but like you look at the viewership of everything, and like we knew a merger was coming in some capacity, and no matter what anybody says, there's very rarely all winners in a merger or a consolidation in some way, shape, or form. It seemed like they were going to be the easy one to unfortunately take the hit on this, and now we're just kind of in this system by Riot's choice. I am just curious to see if this blends well. If we'll have our own identities as the North and the South. We'll come together. I'm sure there will be a rivalry. Something will eventually happen that will spark a little something between the two, assuming any player from the North finally decides to open their mouth and talk some shit and like actually pull through on it. We could have something going. It's just going to be interesting to see, like, when we go to Worlds, is there are going to be North American fans that will be bitter. I'm under the assumption that we will get 2 teams from the North, 1 team from the South. That's me.
As am I. Yeah.
We're going to be bitter that we lost that spot. If the South doesn't perform, is that going to cause tension? Or is the South going to be able to level up in this system to, quite honestly, contend and be at the level that the North is? Because there's no denying, it is a fact. Sorry, Brazilian fans. We're up here. The South for now is here. And I want to see everybody come up to this level. But it's going to take time, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's going to be a really interesting thing. Obviously, there was a lot less kind of inter-region player movement than I thought there was going to be. I thought, for like, Licorice kind of opened the floodgates, right? Of like, oh, he's signing for a LATAM team, but it's like, it's Leon and he's still kind of, it's still LTA North, so he didn't actually go down to Brazil. So it's like, well, right? I thought we were actually going to see like a lot more of this, but I think also it has bred something kind of cool where there are players like a Tinones or a Robo or a Titan that have proven they can hang and, just dumpstered CBLOL for a number of years, right? They've all got anywhere from 5 to 7 titles, and they could hang in the LCS. They could be a mid-tier LCS, mid laner or whatever, right? But I think the fact that they chose to stay in Brazil, right? Again, we'll never know the negotiations of, what were the offers, financially, blah, 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 but I think that enough of the players feel enough of an identity to Brazil that it is going to make the matches a lot more fun. I don't know how it's going to be kind of like, as far as will we, I'd like to think that we'll level up just because you get better by playing better competition, right? But again, the fact that you're not playing them kind of week in, week out, I think that would have been a positive of a, one of the few, before the Brazilians come at me, like one of the few positives of if we went full Valiant, right? You get better because you are playing better teams, right? Again, week by week, right? And yeah, okay, there are fewer, just crap teams you have to play because the leagues have been downsized. But like, I don't know, I don't have an answer for you on that front, right? Kind of how will it level up Brazil, right? I think it will, if nothing else, just because you're going to feel just a strong sense of identity, a bit of us against the world sort of thing. That you have something to prove, right? You've got that kind of target on your back, and I think a lot of the NA teams will probably feel the same way, right? Like if we go to this international tournament and we lose to Brazil. Ooh, there's going to be hell to pay, right? Losing to the LEC 3 seed is one thing, right? Oh, we beat Mad Lions every year. Well, we beat G2. That's all well and good. You go and lose to Pain?
Yeah. There's an objective part of me that is separate from my fandom that sits here and says it would be a really, really good thing if the South could find a way to win Split 1 and that fearless tournament, given that it's single elimination. I think in double elim it's going to be much harder, especially come Split 3 playoffs for a South team to take it. But if the South can take that Split 1, it sets a precedent real quick and lights a fire under everybody in the North's ass. And if it doesn't, everybody should be fired. That's a whole different story.
Yeah, we got different problems.
Yep, we got a whole other issue. But it's like, ideally, that would kind of be best. Will that happen? Absolutely not. Enjoy having FlyQuest push your shit in. Like, that's good luck. Have fun.
Yeah, no, but I know. Look, look, competition can only breed kind of
Yep.
a better environment, right? It always has, or it always will. And I think it would be, I think it would be awesome if I'm hoping that you don't get what happened in tier two, which is the players go, oh cool, I get a free trip to Brazil, and I guess I'll win a meaningless tournament, and then Dragon Steel comes down and just they got waxed. They did not look like themselves, right? But for Brazilian teams, they really cared. They're like, hey, we're in front of our actual home fans, right? All the
Yep.
fans, all the players on Dragon Steel and on Cincinnati Fear, they were like, or Fear Starforge, they were like, look, wow, this is crazy. Like playing against actual fans.
Yeah.
Like, like the fans, like they're actually like, it was hard to hear in my headset. I've never actually experienced that before.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think what I'm looking forward to, if you want to like get a real temperature check of what the vibes are, right? Whatever's the first kind of international tournament or like little, America's qualifier that takes place in Sao Paulo, where TL, FlyQuest, and Cloud9 have to go to what will be a very hostile environment, right? That I think will be, where you get really battle tested.
Technically, that will be split one. The finals of that are with you guys, but I think that's in studio. I don't think it's in like an actual stadium, which is going to be drastically different.
Yes, but I think even then, I think there will be some players who, maybe haven't gone to an international event before, right? Let's say, someone makes a surprise run who, disguised, right?
Yep.
Whatever, right? They go to Brazil and they go, the hell, right? But there are going to be other players who have played in front of raucous Korean and Chinese crowds and stuff like that, right?
I don't think the raucous Korean and Chinese crowds hold a candle though to what Brazil had. And like, look, this is just my traditional sports side speaking. There are 3 markets in the world that I would not want to play in as an opposing fan: the French, the Brazilians, and the New Yorkers. They are the only 3. I'm not even including
Yeah.
all of America. Like New York has earned its reputation
Oh, yeah.
within golf, within any sport that you show up to. Like golf, I think is like a great example. It's like the one sport in America where like everybody expects you to be quiet, and yet here we are heckling fucking anybody that steps
Yeah.
up there. I actually got tickets to the Ryder Cup later this year, and I cannot wait to
Nice.
just
Yeah.
go. And I respect and love Rory McIlroy. If you think that I'm not chirping in his ear every minute that I see him for that missed
Yeah.
putt at the U.S. Open, is like, hey, Rory, you're back on soil. These greens are a little fast. You sure about that? You sure about
Yeah,
that?
no,
You want to take a step
as you
back
should.
there? Come on now. But it's like
Yeah.
we in the North, we have not embraced that yet. And it's one thing I've always admired with the South that I really hope you guys do a good job of in not instilling fear, but getting like I want to see our players get those nerves and then come
Yeah.
back and question our side and be like, why the fuck don't we have that whenever they come here?
Yeah. No, I know. No notes. I have nothing to add. No, I mean there was nothing like. I mean, look, I again to echo the New York point, right? I went last year to. I watched my Pistons get their shit kicked in by the Knicks twice at MSG. I love MSG. It was unbelievable to see. Like, look, the Pistons were historically awful last year. That didn't stop the New York crowd from going absolutely bananas every time. Like every time something positive happened, right? It was a blowout. It was a meaningless game. You could have just like shook hands at the beginning, say, "Hey, all right, we're not going to risk injury. You get a 120 to 100 win. Great, right?" It was an awful experience for me as a Pistons fan, but it was awesome to see. Just like see where like those side talk videos are filmed, right? Where there's
Yep.
F Trey Young and all that, and it's like God, like this market is different, man, right? For better and worse, it is different, right? And like you said, kind of on the not instilling fear, right? Obviously, there's a line with all
Yes.
of this, right? And even in Brazil, we've had like a couple of tiny incidents of like some fans getting into it with others, and certain words are used that
That
shouldn't be, right?
that shit's
But
gonna happen no matter what. You get a lot of people
exactly,
together, you get energy high, mistakes will happen. You just gotta live. You
exactly,
gotta live through them and improve. So like, I hope even if that does happen, people don't take it as like, oh, it can never happen. It's like, no, you live and you
yeah,
learn.
no, like
You
yeah.
fix it.
There are a lot more sensible people than there are. Every fan base has its idiots,
Yep.
right? That is just universally true. That is something that crosses ethnic lines forever. But yeah, no, but I look, I'm really really excited for kind of that first tier one tournament. I think the Brazilian fans are going to show out in force, and I think, like you said, right, no matter who wins, I think there are going to be some players that come back from that, right, and see that and be like, dude, what are we doing? Right, we live in the U.S. It's not that it's a cultural thing, right? It's just like there's something about that it hasn't connected. And I don't have the answer to this, right? I'm sure, and I know you are trying to find kind of the answer to this and growing the local New York scene, right? And so you've seen kind of what it can be, right? Like put college football in front of a crowd in the South, right? Put the Knicks on in front of a crowd in New York, right? Put like the Dodgers. I live just south of LA, like watching the Dodgers win the World Series and how insane that was. People were lining up for a Shohei Ohtani bobblehead 8 hours before first pitch.
Yep.
Right? It's not that Americans can't get into this, right? And being such a diverse place in, in Southern California, where some of these places, these events will happen, and in bigger markets like New York, Chicago, whatever, right? We are such a diverse place. You are going to get, right? Like when I go to Valorant, right? I see Brazilian fans there all the time. There are no Brazilians in LA. They're all in Boston or Toronto or Miami. There are no Brazilians in LA, but they show up, they find their thing, and they're like, no, that's where I'm going, right?
Yep.
I'm really, really looking forward to the in-person events, man. It's going to be a blast.
I cannot wait. Any final remarks you got that North fans need to know about the South?
Look, I'm going to use this to shamelessly plug a product that we are doing, even though we it is not going to be a Riot sponsored thing. We are, kind of waiting on just like, I'd be stunned if they took away our co-streaming rights. I just don't think it's going to happen. Right? I don't think we're going to get paid anymore. But we're going to do it as a passion project. CBLOL English, we have a Discord community full of Brazilians, Americans, Europeans, whatever, that love the CBLOL, right? Or the LTA South, as it's now known. We like anything that you love dearly, you want to get other people into it, right? And so that is our purpose there, right? We'll have, hopefully streams of all the games throughout the year. Some will be more traditional cast formats, some will be just like a watch party, type thing. But like, the chat is always active. It's a very welcoming community. You can ask questions. There's no such thing as a stupid question. I think the CBLOL is the best league in the world. I've been an LCS fan about as long as I've been a CBLOL fan, but I've followed the LCS more intensely than I have the CBLOL for a long time until I started casting the games in 2020. I have fallen in love with the CBLOL, and I believe that there's something special and unbelievable about it. There's a certain je ne sais quoi about it that if you allow it to pull you in and embrace it for its ridiculousness, and I think this is true for everything, right? If you take something for what it is, right? If you take the LCS for what it is, right? I'm sure you share this frustration of like, no, guys, world's results aren't everything. There's so much cool shit that goes on week to week in the LCS, right? And all my friends that are cast tier 2 and tier 3, right? They're like, no, if you allow this thing to be what it is, don't just enjoy the League of Legends, enjoy the personalities, enjoy the shit talk, enjoy how dumb this all is.
Yep.
At the end of the day, right? Embrace it for what it is. It's an entertainment product. If you allow yourself to be entertained by it, you will be.
Amen to that. Couldn't have said any better. Where can people find you on socials?
At Henrique Damour, HenriqueDamour. I imagine that'll be in text somewhere on this on this video. But once this goes up, I'll retweet it and whatnot, so you can find it on there.
You don't got to worry about that. I just want to make sure you, most importantly, get your shout out, because I appreciate you taking 51 minutes out of your day to come and talk to me.
That's I knew we went long. I didn't think it went 50.
Couldn't give a shit. I'll upload the video in full. It'll be fine. I could not care. The context is more important than any hypothetical idea that I have of a video. So that's all that matters.
Yeah.
But
no, and again, like, whether it's me or anybody else on the on the CBLOL English crew, where we've got, we would love to, if you have any questions at all, ask me. My DMs are open. I check them all the time. Please, like, this is one of my favorite things in the world. I did this for free for a long time. I'm going to continue doing this for free as long as circumstances let me. It's a wonderful thing. We'd love to have you on board.
Thank you so much for your time, man.
Thank you.